This episode contains material including issues relating to suicide, suicide ideation, and mental health that could be distressing for some listeners. If you or someone you know is considering suicide, please text the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline or dial 911 in case of an emergency.
This is Carrie Offstein-Rosenthal, and this is the podcast Held.
My love, you left me in the summertime, and all the leaves were on their trees, and all the flowers still smell so sweet. Then the cold
Welcome back to the podcast. This is our last episode. I can't even believe it. And I think today's episode really won't disappoint because we are lucky enough to be with Zach's parents, Abby and Jonathan. So it's very exciting, but we're going to start with Angie for a moment and just go back to get us sort of ready for that conversation. Angie, other than that initial phone call, how often had you talked to Abby and Jonathan?
Maybe several times.
What kinds of things do you say to each other?
She said to me, you gave us this gift 35 years ago. 35 years later, we want to share this gift with you. She and I will forever be bonded in a way that I'm not sure I actually have the words for. It's maybe just more of a feeling. But I know that whatever happens through this life, I will be there for her. I will be there for her family. I will be there for every single one of them if they ever need us. We were at Abby and Jonathan's home. They invited us there for 3 hours, shared photo albums of Zach growing up. There wasn't a story that they wouldn't tell or expound on. And in every single solitary picture, Zach was grinning from ear to ear. He was with his parents. He was with his siblings. They were with friends. They were here. They were there. And he looked so much like me. And just to see those pictures and to really see him growing up over the years and how happy he was and the love that he got, there's probably nothing in this world that makes me happier than knowing that there's no way he could have been more loved or given the kind of life that he was given, more than I could have ever hoped for that child that I gave away.
Did you feel, looking back at those pictures, did you feel sad at all because you had not been able to experience him at that age?
I didn't actually. There wasn't sadness. It was such a feeling of overwhelming shock, which is going to sound stupid, but in some of those pictures, I had to turn the page very quickly because he looked so much like me as a child that it scared me. And some of those pictures I just couldn't look at after the fact. Randy's like, Angie, it does make sense that he looks like you, right? Like it makes sense. Over the years, every once in a while, I would think, what if I had been walking down the street and I passed my child? Would I recognize him or her? My answer after seeing those photos is, had I ever walked next to that child, I would have known it had been mine.
I would like to talk about Jonathan and Abby. And what did they say to you?
They said I was their angel. And perhaps maybe they had used the word hero at one point. It kind of made me laugh because that's who they are to me. It was pretty hard to hear that because it never occurred to me after all of this time that I could possibly have made anyone feel like that. It didn't make me feel like that. And I never allowed myself to feel the feels of the other side.
Can you own that for them, you made the right decision?
I can't.
You put yourself through hell, but for them.
But and that's what I mean by having it all sort of come full circle. I'm almost fully able to say it. I mentioned it before. One day I will say it with 100% certainty, but it was worth this pain. Their happiness, their joy, the love that they had to give a child and for so many years could not. It just breaks and broke my heart. And the fact that they got this phone call that they never thought they would get. And that's not to say that they would not have gotten another baby, but that baby wouldn't have been Zach.
What did their being grateful to you mean to you?
Everything. Just everything. As I said, it just didn't, there were so many things that didn't occur to me over the 35 years, so many things I wouldn't allow to occur to me.
Such as? That
what I would be giving someone else would be just the greatest gift of life. And the fact that for me, those 9 to 10 months felt like not mine. They were deep, they were dark, they were scary as shit.
So back to that question, what did it mean to you in terms of your recovery to hear that what you did was a gift for someone else?
It put things into perspective. I felt extreme relief in that first phone call, hearing Rashi say that he was always so loved and was raised by an amazing family. It wasn't until actually speaking with Jonathan and Abby that first time and hearing their struggles of having a child. And it made me feel thankful that I could give a gift like this. Randy said to me one evening after we were with them for some time, he said, Angie, these people, these families, they must just, there's something else going on here. They have to be too good to be true. This just doesn't even compute. At the end of the trip, after having met many people in their community, many friends, and hearing all of the rave reviews about these people, at the end of the trip, Randy and I decided that the entire community either has been in on this act and trying to make these families seem as great as they really are, or the reality of it is they really are these wonderful people.
Well, speaking of wonderful people, I am so excited because we are lucky enough to have Abby and Jonathan, Zach's parents, with us. Hello and welcome to the podcast. Let's just start with a little background. How long have the two of you been married?
We were married almost 45 years in October.
Why were you interested in sharing this story?
Well, initially, I really wasn't.
Yeah.
It was, pretty private and personal, and I don't mind sharing it with people who I know and friends, but to just push it out there to the public or in some public fashion, I don't think I was a little bit reticent to do that. And I guess what changed my mind was just reflecting more on the overall impact the story might have on others in a positive way, telling the story not to be trying to thrust us into a limelight, but just simply to be able to maybe create some additional support for someone who might be thinking about adopting or someone who might be thinking about putting up a child for adoption. That, there can be some terrific outcomes. You hear a lot of horror stories and things of that nature, but it doesn't have to be that way.
When adoption does work out great for all parties concerned, that's a story that should be told. It can help other people. It's inspirational.
Walk us through what led you to adopt.
So for more than 9 years, my husband and I tried to have children, and we were just not successful. Mm-hmm. I'd had a miscarriage. Then I had another miscarriage. Okay, another miscarriage. And then I couldn't get pregnant. And I went through fertility and I went through procedures, and all I could think about, taking my temperature every morning, having shots every other day or something to stimulate this, that, or the other. And, just nothing was working. My sister, my older sister, who I'm very close with, she's adopted. And she said to me, you're not getting any younger. You need to just try to adopt a child. That's really a good option. You get too old, maybe they don't allow you to. And since I lived with adoption my whole life, I thought, that's a great idea. We spoke to I mean, I spoke with my husband about it. It's not an easy decision. It's somebody else's child. It's never going to be your child. What if you don't like this child? What if this child doesn't like you? What if the birth mother did not take care, did not do prenatal care? What if this child has issues? What if a million questions? And then finally, we just got comfortable with it and we said, let's just do this. That's what led up to it. We wanted a family. We couldn't do it on our own. Let's let someone help us.
But your other 3 children were not adopted, correct?
Right. Right after we adopted, I think Zachary was less than 6 months. I got pregnant.
Oh my gosh. Were you shocked? Were you just absolutely?
I mean, I did think about like 2 kids under 2. Can I do that? But we were thrilled. And I also didn't think I would carry it full term. And then, I'd had two miscarriages already. And so I thought, okay, I'm pregnant, but I didn't get my hopes up.
When you first got Zach, how was that?
That was the interesting thing. I was, not nervous, but I was just wondering, how is this going to fit? When you have your own biological baby, you don't even ask that question because it's like not an option. This is a baby. Right. We're having it, whether it fits or not, whether the kid's good or bad or ugly, you have no control over it. But somehow with adoption, you feel like, well, maybe there's some more control involved here, when in fact there's none. And it was just seamless. I mean, I got to tell you that probably the moment most etched in my life, other than seeing my other 3 kids born, those were right up there with this one, was when they handed him to us at the Jewish Family Service. He was 6 weeks old. Like I know exactly where I was and what I was wearing. I mean, just to the minute detail. It was just one of those just unbelievable moments. Lots of tears. Yeah, we brought him home, and the rest, as they say, is history. I mean, Abby and I were literally fighting over him in terms of who gets to change the diaper, who gets to bathe him, because we just, at this point, we were married in 1977 in October, and we got him in December of 86. So we've been married a little over 9 years.
Wow.
With no kids. I mean, that's the most amazing thing about it. I don't think anyone in our family, including his siblings, there was never any even slight opening that he was not our son, he was not a part of our family, or this was somehow optional or in either direction. And I remember after we got Zach, and he was only 6 weeks old, and I remember Abby's father saying to us, because we were still doing the Pergonal, the hyperstimulation of the ovaries to get pregnant. And I remember Abby's father saying something to the effect, why don't you guys just chuck all that stuff and just relax and enjoy him? And we did. We stopped the Pergonal, we stopped all the infertility treatments we were doing, and we just enjoyed him. And along comes Franny. So again, looking back, it was not unexplained infertility. There was a very good explanation for it. Zachary needed to be part of our family. Once he was part of our family, have as many kids as you want. So I firmly believe that.
As time went on, we were elated. We were, first of all, Zachary was such a great, we were just so in love with this baby. We would rush. If he cried, my husband and I would just, it's my turn. Let's both go. My turn to bathe him. No, it's my turn. It was like, he was so, I don't know. We couldn't get enough of Zachary.
What was Zach like as a child?
He was fantastic. He was into trouble constantly. I mean, just a very rambunctious, high energy young boy. Mm-hmm. There were times that it was just unbelievably unrewarding, and times that it was incredibly frustrating just to keep up with him. At no time did we ever regret, but a good kid, a tremendous heart. I mean, just in terms of his personal, we call them in Hebrew midos, mm-hmm. Characteristics or midot. Of kindness and empathy and loyalty and all the things that you would want in a friend or in a relative or a spouse or a son. I mean, that's him in spades.
What can you tell me about the experience of adoption, like that whole process?
It was pretty smooth. We went through Jewish Family Services. There were home visits and there were things like that. It wasn't arduous at all. You should also know that we turned down 2 babies before Zachary. This is wild. Jewish Family Service calls us and says, we have a baby, but the birth mother wants to be involved. She wants to know you. She wants to be able to see the child. And I said, no. I'm not having, somebody else parent a child with me. It's enough to have your husband and have to, get on the same page with that guy. So we turned that down.
Just the thought of having another person involved or persons involved in how you raise your kids and the mixed messages it can maybe send to a kid. Well, he said I could do it. Well, she said I couldn't. And, all the little petty things as well as the big stuff. I think we wanted to be able to paint that canvas ourselves. Now, it's a little bit of hubris to think you're actually painting the canvas with someone else's life, but maybe stating it differently, if we were going to make mistakes, we wanted to be the ones to make the mistakes without any outside interference. So I think that's why we wanted a closed adoption.
And then I thought, man, they're never going to call us. We're so picky. So that part, the adoption part went smooth. The mental gymnastics going on in my brain was like insanity. When we were going to pick up our child for the first time, I was so terrified. I had, how like your stomach gets all tied up in a knot. I couldn't get out of the bathroom. I was just like a basket case until they put him in my arms. And I looked at him, and at 6 weeks, he smiled at my husband and I. He smiled at 6 weeks, and it was just, your heart melts and you thought, this is my child. So in Tennessee, birth parents have rights. So Angie signed her rights away, but she can change her mind between that birth and a certain period of time. Whatever time frame that is where the birth mother can change her mind, they're not giving a baby and then taking the baby away. They're not going to do that. So for 6 weeks, he was in foster care. Jewish Family Service had a woman who kept all the babies during that time period. Further, the birth father has rights to the child. Now, no one knew who the birth father was. The law in Tennessee is that you have to try and find the birth father. So what they did was they put notices in newspapers, notices in publications. There was a child born on this date in St. Louis. And if you think that you're the father, please contact. And that's for a year. The adoption is not final for a year. And if you want to talk about that being oh my gosh, what would happen if oh my gosh, what if they knock on the door and say, we have found the birth father, he wants the child, rip your heart out. That was a little scary. That was a scary time. At 1 year, we were able to finalize the adoption. What's really interesting is I don't know what was going through Angie's head, but the fact that she didn't tell anyone who the birth father is, what an amazing gift it was to us, not to the birth father.
Yeah.
He was unfortunately just shocked and probably upset, but it was certainly a gift to us. I think it allowed Zachary to hopefully be who he was supposed to be. I just feel very strongly that this soul that came into the world, Zachary, had to be with us in order to reach whatever his potential would be. That's not to say anything negative about the birth mother or the birth father. Just we all have a job in this world. We all have something to do. And I think that he had to be with us.
From a cosmic standpoint, we believe that nothing happens by accident, that God is active in this world and is involved, even though it may not always be obvious to the discerning eye. And even though at times you go through tremendous struggles and strifes in life and you wonder, where is God, if there is a God, and is he a kind God or a just God? And everyone has those issues and questions. I'm no different than anybody else. And you always are looking for validation of that, little signs maybe here and there. But we believe that God is involved in man's life in an active way, even though it may not be obvious. And I think this particular series of events that happened, starting with our adoption from Zachary, but by no means ending there, and ending really with the introduction of Angie and Michael. Now you can kind of step back and actually see it and realize at the time that, yeah, actually this was all, an elaborate play. I'll give you a metaphor. Someone told me this many years ago. I thought it was beautiful. I actually heard it at a funeral of someone who was a severely disabled person who did not have an easy life. And the person at the funerals used the metaphor of a tapestry. And they said that the world is almost like a tapestry, but you only get to see the back of the tapestry. And if you've ever looked at the back of a tapestry, it's basically chaos with threads and different colored items going left and right, up and down, with no seeming pattern or order whatsoever. But if you flip it around, you actually see there may be a beautiful painting that's the front of the tapestry. So we go through life mostly looking at the back of the tapestry and not really seeing these connections, not seeing the master plan, as it were, not seeing God really in control. And every once in a while, if you're fortunate enough, it'll peak at the front.
And you feel like this experience has been a peek at that?
100%.
Do you have any other takeaways from this experience that you'd like to share?
Looking back on what happened, I'm glad that we were able to give Zach that he had the benefit of a normal family life with siblings and all that goes into that, good and bad, with parents who love each other and are able to show that affection. And so he learns how to love another person because of the modeling of the behavior he sees in his own home. And so all that was terrific. And maybe he would not have had that if Angie had made a different decision. Because of Angie's decision, Zach got a huge leg up in life that might not have turned out the way it did. And who he is today and his family and his relationship with his spouse and his kids, and, call them generally well-adjusted, normal people, which is certainly not a given. I think that's something I'm very proud of.
You had said that you didn't want to have an open adoption. And yet now you are so comfortable with the Angie and Randy and Michael and everyone.
Zachary is fully cooked. He is an adult. He can make his own choices. He doesn't say, Mom, do you think I should fill in the blank? He's a grown man. He's got a career. He's got a family. My husband and I are both very comfortable with our relationship with him. In other words, there's room for a lot. I just didn't want in formative years someone else without my values, without my husband's values, to have an influence. At least we do our best to kind of like put a foundation, a solid foundation on a child so that he can be successful. I didn't want anybody else doing that with me.
How would you describe Zachary as an adult?
Funny, kind, a good friend, responsible, any positive adjective. He's handsome. He's a great guy. I mean, he's the kind of guy, how do you describe him? You'd want to be his friend. You'd want to, if you weren't related to him, you'd want to be this man's friend. He's just a great guy.
And Jonathan, how would you describe your relationship with Zach now?
I have a really close relationship with all my children. I love each of them like crazy, like there's no tomorrow. And it's so different with each one. The relationship is very different, but they're all phenomenal kids. But because Zach is the first, and in Judaism, that birthright, if you want to call it that, we call it the Bechor, the firstborn, is extremely special. And so I must say that because he was the first, there's a place in my heart that is just for him and none of the other three. Not that I love them any less. And you also make all your mistakes on the first one. Mm-hmm. And so I have lots of regret because I can have a temper, I can have anger. I never thought I did until I had kids. But thankfully, never to the point where I went too far or he went too far. And I think we have a very, very close, special relationship. Not a lot of words, so not like long, intensive conversations and deep philosophical discussions, but meaningful contacts and meaningful, deep relationship that's sometimes just being there.
How did you share with Zachary that he was adopted?
He was like 3, maybe even earlier. Whenever he was cognitively aware, the Jewish Family Service, they tell you, and I read a lot of books on adoption, they said you should tell them as early as possible. And I remember Zachary, when I told him, he said, why couldn't I be in your tummy? And I said, you were born in my heart. And that was how I told him. Some people are born in a tummy and come out that way. Some people are born in the heart, and that's where you came from.
Over the years, when Zachary was growing up, had you ever thought about his biological family?
Every single day. Not every single day, consciously, but, I always thought, I wish the birth mother could know what a great decision she made, what a brave decision she made, what a wonderful life this child is having. Because he did have not to be bragging about it, but I mean, he had a great life. We took him on trips. He had siblings that loved him. He was a typical older brother that, beat up his siblings. It's character building. I get it. But, you got to get beat up by your older brother. I did think about her a lot. And I wrote letters to her in my head saying, oh my gosh, I don't want you to worry. And every time you read a story about an adoption that doesn't go well, that the parents are terrible or they're wacko, I just, thought, what is she worried about him? I want to set her heart at ease. Is she wondering where he is or where it is, where her child is? I felt, gosh, let her be calm with the knowledge that her child is in good shape, that her child is good. So I thought about her a lot.
Did you know anything about her?
I did.
We had limited medical information. We got a very small amount of medical information. We knew that his birth mother was approximately 17 years old. We knew it was her first birth. We knew she wasn't married. We knew she was Jewish. And a little bit about her health, but not very little. I don't know if we even knew her blood type. There were some very cryptic records that came with that we were allowed to look at. I think we might have known the name of the hospital. I think we knew the exact time of birth and the place of birth, and obviously his weight. And, we had some of those initial things that you get.
I knew that her father had taken her to sign away. She never saw the child. No. If she saw Zachary, oh my gosh, there's no way she could have given.
Talk about a brilliant decision on her part. I don't think I could.
Incredible. I don't know. I thought about her, and I knew that she was young. I knew that she was Jewish. And once I saw Zachary, I knew that she had to be a beautiful woman. Because Zachary was the most beautiful baby I'd ever seen.
Did Zachary ever ask you about his biological parents?
Never. And I would ask him, I would say, like when he was much older, I'd say, Zach, if you ever feel the need to find your biological mother, I think I know a way to help you, because our attorney was a very good friend of the family, knew Angie's father's attorney. And I think the father had mentioned to his attorney, we've got this situation. We're going to have a baby. We want to put it up for adoption. We want it to go to a good home. Do you know somebody? And it just so happened that he mentioned it to our attorney friend. And that's how this whole thing happened. It was literally heaven sent. You can't make, you say, oh man, what a great coincidence. No, there are no coincidences. In fact, that's really how this whole thing evolved. It wasn't just, Jewish Family Service had a baby. It was more private, but we went through Jewish Family Service because we wanted it to be like kosher. Like we wanted all of the papers to be, we didn't want to have any trouble.
It's interesting because the counselor we worked with at Jewish Family Service, she told us at the beginning of the process, tell everybody you are looking to adopt. Because even though you are registered with us and we do place babies that we get, you'd be shocked at how a network of people can reach out and find babies that were not on our radar screen that we would have never seen, that you actually might be able to get a lead on, and that could ultimately pay off. And in fact, that's exactly what happened. A longtime family friend of Abby's parents, we told him along with everybody else, and he had his radar screen up, and he has a colleague that he works with, and I don't know how their paths crossed, but another lawyer similar to him in St. Louis, Missouri, And this lawyer's client is Angie's father. Our lawyer friend, who Abby, growing up referred to as Uncle Bubba. That was a nickname he had. That lawyer that made that connection in Memphis was almost like a brother to Abby's father. So very, very close family friend. And that's how we got Zach.
Did Zachary ever ask about his biological parents?
I think he expressed an interest in finding out something about the medical history that he had. I do remember the books that we read on adoption were very clear that there is a strong desire among almost all adopted children to find their biological parents. It's almost like a longing and a piece of them that's missing, and they call it searching, and they have other terms for it. And the books tell you, don't be surprised by that, embrace it, because you can't put yourself psychologically in their position. So we were fully prepared for that, for this search, and whether it was going to come in his teens or earlier or later, but it never really fully materialized. And I remember there were several times where we told him straight up, listen, Zach, if you want to, first of all, the law in Tennessee is interesting. At age 18, he was entitled to non-identifying information, meaning he can get all the information about his biological parents that exist without their identification, who they are.
Got it.
And at age 21, he's entitled to identifying information. So yes, the adoption is closed, but once he's 21 years old, at his choice, it's no longer closed. And we told him that. And we said to him, look, if you ever decide you want to find your birth mother or your biological father, we will do whatever we can to help you, because we knew there was this subconscious maybe or latent desire of adopted children to find where they came from.
Right.
But he never really seemed to express an active interest in that. Or if he did, he didn't show it.
I don't know. I think Zachary told me that he had done 23andMe, a genetic thing. He wanted to know, he was always, every adopted kid wants to know what their medical history is. And he, you go to the doctor, fill out this mother's family. He can't do that. My sister can't do that. And she has certain health issues that they want to know. So he thought 23andMe would be a good thing. His wife maybe they talked about it. And he did it. And a year and a half or so later, he gets a message. We've located a half sibling. And he came running over here. Oh my gosh, Mom, look at this. He never really expressed to me that he wanted to find his adoptive. Maybe he didn't want to tell me, maybe he didn't want to hurt me. Honestly, it would not have hurt me. But because again, Jonathan and I are so comfortable with our relationship with him. It's such a blessing. But anyway, so I think that's what spurred it. It's like, oh my gosh, I have a half sibling.
It's very clear that you're comfortable and secure in your relationship with Zachary, that you were very okay with this. But when it was actually happening, what were you feeling?
I was kind of excited for Zachary. I really was. I mean, are you asking me if I've ever felt threatened? No, I'm just not that person. I was so excited for him because, look, I know what it is. I don't know what it is to be adopted. I've been around it my whole life. My sister had a much more difficult time with her being adopted. I felt very excited for him because really I was kind of thinking of my sister more than Zachary. I was so excited for him. You'll get to, but I'll tell you, I was scared. The scared part came in like, please let them like him. Please let it go well for him. Please let them not undo everything that we have done for 30, whatever it was, plus years to give this man a sense of worth and confidence. Please let it go well for him. That was my only worry.
Actually, I had a concern for the biological father and mother. I had no concern for Zach, no concern for us, but I was concerned about what this disruption would maybe do to them. And I remember telling Zach at some point in time, well before this, when we did have conversations about finding his biological parents, you got to make sure they want to be found. Because there's a chance that they've completely moved on with their life, that this is not something they have told other people about who are close to them in their lives. They have their own families. And, it may be well and good for you to find them, but maybe they don't want to be found. So I wanted him to be prepared for that. I didn't want him to be, disappointed if that's how it turned out. I mean, I guess we hope they would be normal people, you know, respectable members of society at some level, you know. As long as Zachary and his biological parents want that relationship, we want that as well. I mean, you always want to protect your child.
Yeah.
So if there was going to be any harm to him, I mean, I guess we would have gotten our backs up. And let's just say Abby can be quite formidable. So you don't want to get on her bad side. As can I think. I think together we're, you know, more than able to protect the kids if we need to, even though they're now fully grown adults. And, you know, I think as long as Zachary was all in, I think we were all in.
And in your estimation, has it gone well?
It's gone better. I could not have asked for a better outcome because both sides, his birth mother family, birth father family, have embraced him with warmth, with love, with acceptance, with excitement. And, you know, a mom wants to see that for her kid. You know, you want things to go well. You don't want your child to suffer. You don't want your child to feel like dejected or rejected. You know, thank God everything I have no worries.
At what point did you realize that the last name was shared?
Immediately. And the interesting thing is that everybody, when you say, oh my gosh, the birth father and your adoptive parents have the same last name, how crazy is that? Insanely crazy. We were just like, oh my goodness, this can't be a coincidence.
When I mentioned the tapestry and God being in control, that's, you know, that kind of cinches it for you.
Yes.
Because our diagnosis of unexplained infertility was really not unexplained infertility. Mm-hmm. He was supposed to be in our family. And if we had had my daughter first, he would not have been. So it wasn't unexplained infertility. It was God's way of saying, I've got a kid here that I'm going to put into your trust. You're going to have to just bear with me here. It's hard right now, but this is all going to play out for the good. And then once you've got him, you can have as many kids as you want. I firmly believe that. I believe there are cosmic forces here at play that we only have a little glimpse of. And it's not just because I'm deeply religious, which I am. It's because I believe that from a theological standpoint, there's no way you can explain so many things that happen in this world without a God force.
I always had a connection with the birth mother before I ever knew her. We had no idea what that situation was, you know, young, teenage, whatever. We had no idea. But I did think about the birth mother. Gosh, I thought about her a lot.
After Zach met her, what were your thoughts?
I was so excited. I couldn't wait to let all of that out. I mean, I had been carrying for 35 years. I have been carrying this. And now I get to finally, the only thing I was worried about is like, can I possibly put into words all of my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions, and for Zachary's lifetime to express to her my gratitude, my admiration, my gosh, I was just so thankful. I don't know. I was just worried that I wouldn't be able to convey how indebted we are to her. Because even though she gave him life, he's my son. Mm-hmm. I hope, and I think it's going really well, that ultimately he will be her son and my son. For example, when Randy and Angie came I am so glad they came. I can't tell you. They came for the Jewish holiday of Purim. They weren't here. It was the week before Purim. And Zachary's son, who's in the 3rd grade, he had the lead in the Purim play. He was going to be King Ahasuerus. So I learned the lines with him, and I worked with him, you know, drilling this huge part into this kid's head. He didn't want to learn it. So we're sitting there. Angie and Randy are there for the play. We get these like 2nd row seats, and we've got, you know, batteries are charged, and Zachary's son does an amazing job. At one point, all of the King Ahasuerus, that's his part, all of the court people are dancing around King Ahasuerus. And I turned to Angie and I said, Angie, in less than 20 years, we're going to be sitting together watching the same exact thing. And she looks at me, she goes, what? I go, in less than 20 years, this child is going to get married and we're going to be sitting at his wedding and his friends are going to be dancing around him. And you and I will sit here just like we're doing now at his wedding, watching the same thing.
When did you finally meet Angie? Did you meet her over the phone, in person? How did
I did. We did a Zoom at Zachary's house and we had a long conversation, a lot of tears. I think in my point, there were tears of happiness. I think in her, from her perspective, tears of happiness, just exceptional relief and release and, hopefully healing. And I can't tell you, it was incredible. It was amazing.
I will say of everybody, I feel like the person from whom she has received the most healing has been you. I think for you, she is 100% the gift giver. And in her mind, she was a devil, a bad, shameful creature.
I knew that. I thought that, not from meeting her.
No.
But I mean, what must a woman go through to carry life, to feel life, moving around and, doing somersaults inside? You're so connected to this part of you, this other little person. And what must you feel like to say, yeah, I'm giving him away. I'm giving this child away. Do you feel, I just kept wanting to send her over, space and time. Don't feel bad. You're doing a good thing. You're so brave. You're such a good person. Don't feel bad. I mean, if I could have just telepathically given her these messages, I knew she must be feeling, don't worry. It's great. Don't be scared. Don't be, I'm telling you, I was very connected to her through Zachary's life. She wasn't connected to me, but I was connected to her.
The first time we met her, she actually came and we were with her over a Sabbath, over a Shabbos. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time we actually met her in person. I mean, so in terms of just her and her personality and Randy and just lovely people. So that was great. I guess I didn't fully appreciate the trauma that she had been through in her early years and how that had been suppressed and what that does to a person. And it's not that she bared her soul to us in that first, weekend series of meetings that we had, but a little bit. And I've come to appreciate fully, how challenging that was for her and what the things she had to do to, in her own mind, at least survive, and then block all that away and suppress it for so many decades. And that's not an easy thing. And then it all comes rushing to the surface in an instant, and you can never put the toothpaste back in the tube. It's out. I'm hoping that as time goes on, that not only is she getting over that, maybe that's the trite word to use, but I'm hoping that, as I said, now that she can look at the front of the tapestry a little bit, that she actually can maybe even go back and not feel as bad as she felt at the time, knowing that there was there was a bigger play in effect that she was a part of, but not the only part of. And, my heart just goes out to her. There's no way you can take that pain away. But again, as we get older and we get more perspective on life, I'm hoping that it can become, maybe not to the point where she looks back fondly on those years, probably that will never be, but looks back more retrospectively and as a more mature adult and realizes that, what I went through was not fun, but it's part of who I am, and I can either embrace it and build on it and become stronger. But when you're introduced to adversity, and that was certainly a huge circumstance of adversity, it introduces you to who you are. And the emotions were still quite raw when we had that first meeting in Memphis. I think Angie's gotten, she's in a better place now than she was then. And I think every time I meet her and see her and interact with her, she's in yet a better place. So I think gradually she's building herself back up. And that's a good thing.
Let me ask you this. Were you aware that Angie actually did try to take her life?
She had mentioned that to me, and I'm not sure, was it while she was, I think it was while she was pregnant. And I understand it. I understand it so well because, again, a teenager has no ability to look past today. Everything is monumental. And I can't tell you how I kind of felt what she was going through, not while she was pregnant, but once I had this child and I'm looking, everything is great for me and everything. The corollary of that is everything's not great for this birth mom. And again, I didn't know she was Angie. I had no idea. She could have been a crackhead. How do I know?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's part of the worry. Whatever she was, from being the worst to the most amazing, I just wanted her to feel good about her decision. I knew she was going through turmoil. How could you not go through turmoil? I felt just terribly, bad for her. Like she didn't get the benefit of all this beauty and happiness and joy that I'm getting. It's a weird sensation, but whatever, I felt connected. I had the good part. She did not. But now I want her to have the good part. I have the good part. I'm willing to share. I've had them for 35 years, 36 years. She can have them.
Yeah.
It's like, it's very complicated, but, deep, I was thinking deeply about this whole situation for 35 years.
What was your time like with Angie? Because I know she came to your house and looked at pictures.
Oh, it was great. I wish it would have been, longer. Yeah, it was lovely. She's a lovely person. I just think God has just been very, very gracious and good. I'm so grateful for who Angie is, for the circumstances that we are in each other's lives. I just am enormously grateful for everything. It just could not have worked out better. And I say this and I don't want it to seem like that. I'm not like, okay, I'm done with Zachary. It's not that. It's interesting when we went to court, we had to go to court to make the adoption final. So my husband and I go to court and I am very pregnant. I am really pregnant. My daughter was born in February, and I think the adoption was final in December, because that was a year. We got Zachary December, like middle of December. Mm-hmm. So we went to court a year later to finalize the adoption. That said his birth certificate, mother, Abby, father. So I'm sitting, I have to go on the stand and talk to the judge. He's got to ask me questions. And I am big. I was big with that pregnancy. I put on a lot of weight. And the judge looks at me and says, now, you're going to have to love this child that you're adopting as much as you love the child that you're carrying. And in my head, I was thinking, how will I ever love the child that I'm carrying as much as I love the child I'm adopting? How can I love anyone as much as I love Zachary? I couldn't possibly. But you know what happens with your second child? Your heart expands and you love them just as much, right? And then the third child and the fourth child and every subsequent child, your heart just expands. And that's kind of how I feel with Angie and Randy and Michael and his family. I feel like there's enough room to love all of them. That's the cool thing about our heart. It's like this, but it can expand.
I think that's a beautiful way to say it. And I've heard Angie say that as well, that it's just more people to love. And
it is. And you think I couldn't love another person, but you can.
It's funny because I've talked to Randy a lot about that. I was like, do you feel out of it? Because, Michael's there and...
Well, guess what? Zachary's kids love Randy. And Randy's a great guy. He is such a good guy. He's fun. He's sweet. I got such good vibes from him. I thought, thank you, God, for Randy being in Angie's life. That is And I, when I found out that they didn't have children, and she said, look, we're okay. We're okay with it. We love our life. We're okay with it. But, I think people at a certain age, you think, I wish I would have had a kid. I wish I would have had a bigger family. I wish, and here it is.
Yeah, I think she feels a real connection. So I
think that's great because, sometimes we don't know what we're missing until we miss it. And so I think that's what could happen to a birth mother that doesn't have, at the end, if she doesn't have other children, but what a tremendous gift to say, oh, I do have a child. I have grandchildren. And for her parents to say, oh my gosh, I have great grandchildren.
Oh my God.
They should all live and be well. It's a tremendous gift. I hope that they live long and really feed the relationship, grow the relationship, and have it be satisfying for all. I think it obviously it's on a good footing. They're on their way. We're on our way. It's all good.
Were you surprised that Michael didn't know he had a son?
I was not at all surprised.
Okay.
I think he kept it together pretty well during that call because that's basically, what he found out about. But I don't believe he knew, and I don't think he necessarily had any reason to know. So it completely blindsided him, I'm sure. I don't think that was easy.
The way she describes it, she said that the secret she had it was like she put on a thunder shirt to kind of secure her. And the fact that no one knew kept her safe. And the minute she got that phone call, the thunder shirt came off. And all the things she had compartmentalized and put away so that she could move on with her life had to come to the surface. And they had nowhere to go because she had this, had this security blanket, sort of the secret.
I'm her thunder shirt. Wow.
It was the darkest time in her life, but now this, I think, is probably one of the most amazing times.
And here's Angie, hopefully really enjoying the fruits of this. It was just a trauma. But in that, look what was created.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
How do you see this relationship with his biological parents moving forward?
I think we're all one big family now, so they're going to be tagging along and part of whatever we do. Maybe tagging along is a pejorative. They're going to be part of what we do. So, yeah, I think Michael, his family, Angie, her family, extended family, I think they're all in now. So they're going to get the invitations. They're going to be part of the deal. Meet all the other siblings and all their... You should also know this. All of my kids have a certain level of crazy about them. Uh-huh. They're all crazy. I mean that in a good way. But of all my kids, Zach is the craziest. He takes the crazy to another level. And that's part of what makes him so just unique and lovable. And his siblings will tell you the same thing.
Well, this has been so wonderful. And I'm so grateful that we got your voice in this because I think it's really important. So I want to say thank you very much.
Absolutely.
This has been lovely, very cathartic and great and emotionally satisfying.
Yes.
This whole situation is.
Angie, when you hear that, you just have to how amazing are those people? And what's amazing is that they've really opened the door for you to have you and Michael to have this beautiful relationship with Zach and his family. Given that there really are no bounds, how do you envision your relationship with Zach moving forward?
I just want to be that person in his life that doesn't judge, doesn't want anything from him. He doesn't need another parent. He's got it. He's got those. So what I can do is I can just be there to support him in his choices and to just be extra love.
How has this healed you?
What a ride. I thought I was going to my deathbed with this secret, and I never thought that I would be able to speak at this level of the kind of shame and pain that I went through, but now also the joy. that I'm going through. Before this phone call, sleeping was easy. Sleep now, I go to sleep. Last thing I see are their faces. First thing I see when I wake up are their faces. Something happens in our world, these shootings, these wars, these politics. And all I can think about are Danny and Melly. And everything has changed because of them. Every single component of my life has changed since this secret has come to light.
And what are your goals today?
Getting closer and forming more memories and melding into just one great big family, which is the way we're headed. I also have goals for myself. I don't feel like I am being anchored down by this weight, by this rock. That was what I was carrying around with me. And I had to crack open and just chisel away at that extremely heavy piece of me in order to get to the real me. But I am here to embrace it now and be the person I know I can be for those grandchildren. They will forever and always be the ones that I walk through this life for, from that phone call forward, really.
How do you feel about giving up your secret now?
Oh, in so many ways, it just feels so scary and vulnerable and raw and burdensome to other people, and perhaps disappointing or surprising to some people. But this is who I am. This is my truth. This is my secret that is no longer, and I just feel free.
You have been listening to the podcast Held. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been a huge privilege to be part of this podcast. I want to thank everyone who was involved for their honesty and willingness to share their story with us. If you enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to share it, and make sure you check our website for extras that we'll be putting up, as well as many of the pictures that we've been alluding to throughout the podcast. We also want to give a big thank you to Ali Hoffman and Joe Rosenthal, who gave us permission to include their song in our broadcast. The name of the song is Magnolia by Ali Hoffman. It is available for download and streaming on all major music streaming services. This is Carrie Offstein-Rosenthal. Thank you again for joining us.
Make you too afraid.